continue on thermoregulation. So last time we stopped at freeze avoidance. So this freeze avoidance, in this mechanism or regulation, freeze avoidance, we have antifreeze molecules that act uh, through depressing the freezing point or disrupting the ice crystal formation when the cell exposed to extreme temperature. Okay, continue to the next slide. What happened when animal exposed to cold temperature? So another mechanism in thermoregulation when exposed to cold temperature is thermogenesis. Thermal heat, genesis production, generate. Okay, so heat is byproduct of metabolic processes. Okay, generate heat using metabolism processes. What are the metabolism processes or metabolic processes? First is the energy metabolism. This one you can relate with glucose used by the cell to get ATP, the energy. Okay, during this catabolism of glucose, okay, the cell will produce a lot of ATP. If you remember, 38 of 36. What else? Metabolic processes, digestion. So digestion, we ingested or we take outside food particles. We put it put it into our body system. So that food particles contain their embedded energy. Okay, now when we ingested the food, the energy from that food particles will be transferred into our body system. The digestion also will produce heat. Another example of metabolic processes, muscle activity. Okay, this one, if you reflect, you walk for 500 meter or 200 meter, just walking. Okay, so during walking, the muscle contract and relax. The limbs move, right? So when the limbs move, the muscle contract and relax. So you walk 100 meters, you just walking, but you still sweating, right? So muscle activity can produce heat. Okay, when exposed to cold temperature, metabolic processes will produce heat to encounter the cold exposure stimulus. Okay, this second point here, both endotherm and ectotherm generate heat. Okay, we have many types of animals. So in these animals, in terms of heat sources, okay, the endotherm, the heat comes from inside the body, endo, and ectotherm, the heat the heat comes from outside, ectotherm. Okay, but both have cells, right? Endotherm, ectotherm both have cells, and cells will metabolize. Cells will undergo metabolism, whether anabolize or catabolism. So metabolism will produce heat. Okay, so let's see what is thermogenesis. Thermogenesis have two divisions. One is shivering thermogenesis. Okay, another one is non-shivering thermogenesis. I think in the YouTube that I shared did touch about this a little bit. Okay, shivering thermogenesis. In shivering thermogenesis, it involves the muscle, because this muscle will contract and relax. Okay, so during that contraction and relaxation of the muscle vigorously, it will produce the heat. Okay, so animals that have abundance of muscle, like birds and mammals, So this muscle abundance can help these birds and animal to produce heat during cold exposure. Okay, and it works for short periods of time. And this one, I think it's simpler to imagine that you immerse your body, or you immerse yourself in bucket of ice, okay, about 2 or 3 minutes, and then you went out from the bucket of ice. You can feel that your hand or your body system will shiver. Okay, so that shivering is actually producing the heat to balance back the cold exposure. Okay, so that is shivering thermogenesis. Look into non-shivering thermogenesis. It involves these tissue here, or these cells here, cells tissue, brown adipose tissue. This brown BAT, brown adipose tissue, is different from white adipose tissue. White adipose tissue is, or white adipocytes, cells that store fat, right? Brown adipocyte or brown adipose tissue we'll use that energy from food or the food storage, okay, into heat, totally used to produce heat. Whereas the white adipocyte that contain fat or lipid, this white adipocyte will use that fat when that person has no more energy sources like glucose or protein. Okay, all right, so who has this BAT? So small mammals or newborn of larger animals will have this BAT tissue. It's usually located at back and shoulder region. Okay, so in this BAT tissue will have higher number or higher levels of mitochondria, and BAT tissue also can express their own gene, and this gene will encode for thermogenin protein. Okay, and this BAT, or the mechanism that happen or occur in BAT is controlled by sympathetic nervous system. Sympathetic nervous system is when norepinephrine or adrenaline is higher in the body, so that norepinephrine will cause effect. Okay, controlled by sympathetic nervous system, so presence of norepinephrine. Okay, this norepinephrine will cause effect to BAT. What happen in the BAT? This BAT, brown adipose tissue, will increase in number. So from 10 BAT, now suddenly produce 50 BAT cells, okay, when exposed to norepinephrine. Simpler analogy. What else? When norepinephrine present, it will give effect to BAT. In terms of the BAT will increase in size of the cell, okay, become more fattening, and become more fattening. Okay, so what else inside BAT? This BAT will synthesize TG, is triacylglyceride, lipid, right? Triacylglyceride. Synthesis of triacylglyceride. Okay. Synthesis of triacylglyceride. The fat is being used to produce the heat. Fat oxidation, fat metabolized into triacylglyceride. Okay, fat is the bigger size of macromolecule, and break down the fat, it will produce the smaller macromolecules, which is triacylglyceride. So what else happened in BAT? mitochondria proliferation, mitochondria increase in number. So when increase in number, it will induce or stimulate cell respiration. It will stimulate more cell respiration. Okay, and then in BAT, express the protein thermogenin. BAT have their own gene expression, and that gene will be expressed to produce thermogenin protein. Okay, combine these together, synthesis of triacylglyceride, a lot of mitochondria inside the BAT, and expression of thermogenin protein. It will increase mitochondria respiration. Eventually, it will produce a lot of heat. Okay, so in BAT, it doesn't involve muscle contraction. It's just involve the BAT using their own cellular mechanism or regulation, such as high number of mitochondria, and then the breakdown of the fat into triacylglyceride. So that breakdown of fat will produce the heat. Okay, and eventually this thermogenin protein helps in terms of heat production. Oh no. Okay, relating to mitochondria in brown adipose tissue. Okay, what happened is usually mitochondria organelle is where the cell respiration happen. Okay, the Krebs cycle happen in the inside in matrix mitochondria. Okay, produce the byproduct NADH and FADH2 here, and this NADH and FADH2 will undergo oxidation phosphorylation. Okay, that also oxidation phosphorylation is actually at the mitochondrial membrane. Okay, so when this NADH and FADH2 undergo this ring or change of oxidation phosphorylation, okay, eventually they produce ATP. Okay, this is biochemistry in terms of cellular metabolism or cellular respiration. Okay, ATP normally resynthesized from ADP and phosphate inorganic by movement of H plus down its chemical gradient here. The last phase is this H plus will go down their concentration gradient. As they go down the concentration gradient through this pathway here, the protein here, it will make the ADP bind to phosphate inorganic to produce the ATP. Okay, so this is normally what happen in cellular respiration. So what happened in BAT relating to mitochondria? Okay, in BAT mitochondria, the inner membrane contains a H plus channel protein. So our thermogenin protein is actually this one. Thermogenin protein is actually a H plus channel protein. Protein that allow H plus to pass through, or it's a transporter protein for H plus. Okay, so thermogenin lead the H plus into matrix mitochondria without passing the normal pathway, which is the ATP synthase. Okay, during this transportation of H plus through thermogenin into the matrix of mitochondria this proton or H plus will react with oxygen, and that reaction produce heat. So that's what it means by this BAT will use food particles to produce heat. Okay, the food particles, the Krebs cycle eventually produce the NADH and FADH2, and when this NADH and FADH2 undergo the oxidation phosphorylation, so it will increase H plus concentration in this region here. So this H plus concentration, the H plus will go to its down concentration gradient in order to produce ATP, but in BAT it will go through this thermogenin protein channel and react with oxygen, directly produce the heat. So yeah, so basically this is that's what happened in BAT thermoregulation. Okay, so wrap up thermoregulation, homeostatic balancing of body temperature. Okay, early part of our learning process, a learning session, we cover the physiological thermoregulation, right? So about sweat glands, cutaneous blood vessel, vasodilate, vasoconstrict. Okay, and then also involve the thermogenesis, which is non-shivering and shivering thermogenesis. Okay, slide after this is about vasodilation, vasoconstriction. I think this is simple enough. You can read by yourself. Internal thermostat. This one to explain, we have thermostat in at hypothalamus, in the hypothalamus. So information from peripheral and central about heat or about temperature sensor will be read or integrated in the hypothalamus. Once hypothalamus integrate the information, it will send signal to the body to alter or to execute whatever mechanism to balance back the stimulus, whether hot or cold. Okay, I think this one had covered in the YouTube video shared. Yep. Okay, I'll continue a little bit more about hyperthermia. Okay, hyper excessive. Hyper is excessive or higher. Okay, thermia means thermal, so high thermia, high heat, high temperature. Okay, fever is one example of hyperthermia. Or we exposed to very hot environment, okay, eventually can cause heat stroke. Okay, before we get heat stroke, the body is in hyperthermia condition. Okay, hyperthermia, regional cell and tissue damage lead to local inflammation. So example of the simplest example is fever. The whole body hyperthermia induced by pyrogen. So what happened is macrophage detect endotoxin from a bacteria and virus. The bacteria and virus that enter in our body system, this bacteria and virus is the foreign materials, foreign cells. Okay, so our immune system will detect these foreign cells. The macrophages especially detect the endotoxin. Endotoxin is secreted by bacteria or virus. Okay, once foreign particles enter our body, these foreign particles will secrete or produce endotoxin, and endotoxin here will detect by macrophage. Okay, once macrophage detect the endotoxin, this macrophage will produce endogenous pyrogen, produce pyrogens here. This pyrogen is actually a chemical switch, to thermostat. Okay, so thermostat will detect this pyrogen. Eventually it will can we say calibrate, or it will increase the thermostat in our body. Thermostat should be 36.5, but suddenly when the hypothalamus detect this pyrogen, it will increase the thermostat into 37. Okay, so once the thermostat increase into 37, that's why we experience fever by shivering, right? Our body is hot, but we are shivering because our body shiver because to achieve the new level 37 degrees Celsius, the new level of body temperature that set by this thermostat. So this is the fever pathway mechanism. Okay, immune cells, the actor or the regulator is the immune cells. Okay, the immune cells detect the endotoxin, it will produce the pyrogen. So pyrogen will react this with the pyrogen cause release of release of prostaglandin. Okay, the pyrogen cause prostaglandin secretion or prostaglandin increase in secretion. So that prostaglandin set the new thermal set point from 36.5. The new one become 37. So that's why when hypothalamus detect the new thermal set point, okay, hypothalamus will send signal to blood vessel to vasoconstrict. That's why we feverish patient with fever, sometimes we can see very pucat, okay, fair. The muscle shiver in order to achieve the new thermal set point 37. Okay, so the aim is to increase core temperature due to new thermal set point during fever. Alright. Okay. Under thermoregulation, also relate with counter current exchange. So counter current exchange conserve heat by transferring thermal energy from warm blood to cold blood. Important in regional heterothermic like fish and bird. Okay, in tuna fish, blood from the heart goes to the gills where the heat is lost. Yes, inside the body, the core body temperature, we have a higher heat or higher temperature. So the circulation, the blood will carry that heat, okay, travel throughout the body, and eventually will transfer that heat by counter current. Okay. Cool blood in arteries flow in one direction, while warm blood in the veins from the opposite direction. So yeah, this one, sorry. So direction is the direction opposite direction. So as you can see, the red color of course carry heat. Okay, so as this heat travel to here to the right, and this the below one, the flow from right to from left to the right, here is cold and here is hot, right? So this hot this opposite direction that carries different heat thermal, okay, it will exchange, follow the gradient, okay. Eventually, but at the end of this, the below flow here, it will eventually carry the heat. The top one, previously there's a lot of heat, start with a lot of heat, and then due to exchange, they end with low heat flow. Okay, last but not least, about relaxed endothermy. So this relaxed endothermy is about the mechanism that animal do, okay, or take place to withstand, to withstand the stimulus of cold temperature. Hypometabolic phase. Hypo is low metabolic phase, accompanied by decrease in body temperature. So example here, hibernation and torpor. Okay, some animals in cold region country, so this animal will exhibit or display whether hibernation or torpor. What happened during hibernation and torpor is actually they stay dormantly, they stay very quietly, sort of like sleeping, and during this period of stay quietly or dormant, their body temperature decrease. This help them in terms of less heat dissipation. Okay, they retain the heat to their core body temperature. Okay, so there will be minimal of heat transfer or heat exchange during hibernation and torpor. So the difference between these two, hibernation and torpor, is in terms of time cost. So you can see hibernation take months. Okay, here example, maybe polar bear. Okay, or you can search, do your own research about example of animal that do hibernation. So hibernation take 1 month, but for torpor is about hours. Okay, at certain hours they will stay dormantly to conserve the heat into their core body temperature, so less heat exchange or less heat loss. Okay, do your own reading or research on hibernation and torpor, please. Alright, that's all for thermoregulation. The last part of thermoregulation. Before I review, let's stop here.